Now I'm going to show you how you can plan with Trifecta. The example that I'm going to show you comes from a unit that we're going to be doing on plants. One thing that Trifecta does is integrate the Common Core state standards. In my example unit, I have different folders with different Common Core state standards labeled on each folder. And within each folder, I have my appropriate task cards that I'm going to use. I've laid out my task cards in front of me so it could help me plan for my lessons itself. As you can see, I've placed my different task cards in the order of which I'm going to be using them. And so now I have my basic premise from which I'm going to plan the remainder of my unit. Each task card has an I can statement written on it, and each task card also has the appropriate standard written on it. This makes easy reference for both the teacher and her students. I'm going to briefly describe the activities that I'm going to do. For science, I can explain how plants survive in their environment. The students will learn about plants and what they need to survive in their environment. In this particular lesson, students will focus on the importance of light. The students will conduct a research project where they will see how plants grow in their environments with natural light, artificial light, and no light. I can use place value understanding to round numbers to the nearest 10. Students will measure their plants. They will round their measurements to the nearest 10. I can draw a bar graph to represent data with several categories. Students will create a bar graph to represent the data they collected. And finally, I can compose an informative text about a given topic. Students will create an informative text piece using what they learned through their readings, discussions, and experiments. And my standards that I'm using: Science 3L2, Math I'm using 3NBT1 and 3MD3, and for English Language Arts I'm using W32. Another thing that Trifecta integrates is revised Bloom's taxonomy. If you look at this Trifecta chart, you will notice that there are revised Bloom's verbs written at each of the different levels. That way, a teacher can take a generic Common Core I can statement and move them to the different levels that they are at different lessons that she's presenting. For example, when you introduce a lesson, your students may be at a more basic level, but as their understanding deepens, you may go higher up the pyramid. And these verbs will help the teachers to know exactly where she wants to put her task card at a given point in the lesson or in the unit. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to look at my I can statements that I'm going to do for my sample lessons. Okay, at first my children are going to explain how plants survive in their environment. So that's a more basic level. So my RBT level is understanding. As you recall, after my students have gained a basic understanding of what plants need to survive, they're going to conduct a research activity and they're going to analyze the results. So that's going to be a higher revised Bloom's level, and so I'm going to write analyzing. Okay, and that's a good example of how I could use my generic task card here for part of a lesson or a unit, and then I move it up. For my second I can statement, my students are applying a math skill. So I'm going to write that down. For my third I can statement, my students are drawing a bar graph to help them analyze their data. So I'm going to write analyzing. And lastly, my students are going to compose an informative text piece about their given topic, and that is creating. The third thing that Trifecta integrates is the 21st century skills. You will notice that on this particular trifecta chart, the 21st century skills are written on the bottom of the chart itself. Since my chart is laminated, I can just go ahead and highlight the 21st century skills that are appropriate for this unit of study. In this unit, my students are skilled mathematicians. They're curious researchers, they're effective communicators, and they are science savvy. I've just highlighted those. Since my chart is laminated, I can highlight and erase with ease. Now I'm going to quickly jot down the 21st century skills that I'm using. For science, my students are science savvy, and they are curious researchers. For math, my students are skilled mathematicians. And for English language arts, my students are effective communicators. As you can see, I very quickly planned a lesson that seamlessly integrated my Common Core State Standards, my revised Bloom's Taxonomy levels, and my 21st century skills. All I'm going to do now is just simply place my task cards on their appropriate levels. And now I'm ready to present my lessons to my classroom of students.
Before we begin our lesson today, we're going to do a quick review of what we've done so far in our activities. So earlier in our unit, we worked on researching about plants and how they survive in their environment. And then we worked on measuring and rounding plant growth. And then we graphed our data and analyzed the information. And today what we're going to work on is writing an informational piece about a given topic. And again, that topic will be about how plants survive in their environment. So we're going to get to that higher level of thinking today by composing our own informational text. So we're going to use the research that we've learned throughout this unit, and we're going to put it in an informational writing piece. So today, the 21st century skills that we're going to work on are being an effective communicator, because as you know, writing is a form of communication, and we're going to be science savvy. So we're going to take all the information that we've researched today and put that into our writing to create a really good informational writing piece about how plants survive in their environment.